Hello and welcome to Green Building Bites presented by Green Building Alliance. I'm Leslie Montgomery with the Green Building Alliance team, and in today's bite, we are celebrating National Mentoring Month with a special interview with my friend Emily Pierson-Brown. Emily is a designer, architect, and planner with Perkins Eastman, and she's also the co-founder and co-leader of the Women in Design group here in Pittsburgh. So today I'm going to interview Emily all about the group and about mentorship, and I'm so excited to bring you this conversation. Let's meet Emily now. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Leslie.
It's good to see you, and thanks for interviewing with me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
First, tell me about the Women in Design group and its mission, and tell me a little bit about how being involved with this group has strengthened your own work.
Forgive me, I'm just going to read our mission because I think it really well encapsulates who we are and what we're trying to do. Our mission is that we are a grassroots organization of design professionals committed to making our allied industries more diverse, more inclusive, and more equitable. We champion the marginalized voices of design in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We call attention to inequities which restrict the success of women plus and actively work to challenge these injustices. This work really grew out of my involvement with the Perkins Eastman Women's Leadership Initiative and some other folks who were involved in that. When we started talking to other people and friends and colleagues in other firms across the city, of course, we discovered that women and minorities were having similar experiences that we were having. And all of a sudden, we wanted to get to know one another better. We wanted to share our stories. We wanted to really, in a broad way, understand the structural inequities that exist in the business world, in particular in the design world, that have really too long stifled our individual and collective advancement. And so being engaged with these issues and in constant conversation with folks around them has really helped me to be a better advocate across the board for myself, but also for other people. And it's not just in my firm, but really helping anyone in any design capacity in the Western Pennsylvania area where I can. And I've really learned to trust my voice in that way and to find allies to help give this work some more weight, but also to make sure that we are able to make actual progress.
Based on that description, why do you think mentorship is so important for women and other minorities in these design fields?
I think that historically mentorship has really happened in this sort of casual, informal way, particularly between, an established person in business and a more junior staff member. And more often than not, those were white men because that's who had established businesses, who was in leadership positions. And I think, there's that moment of recognition of seeing somebody in a position where you started out and you say, oh, I'm going to take this person under my wing. Let's go have coffee. Let's have lunch. I'm going to invite you to a business meeting. And all of a sudden that junior person is gaining all of this experience and having these business relationships and conversations that other people aren't having. And particularly that hasn't happened for women and minorities because we're not in those leadership positions. And so then that cycle really perpetuates itself. So I think that when you don't have women and people of color in particular in leadership positions, you have less opportunity for that kind of obvious mentorship from the upper level to junior staff. And that started to change somewhat and significantly over the years, but really it needs to happen in an intentional way to ensure that women and minorities in those more junior roles, as people are coming into the workforce, are feeling supported, are getting those opportunities, are really getting into the spaces where decisions are being made, where conversations with clients and other designers are happening, so that people are getting exposed to not just the project work, which is, endemic to who we are and what we're doing, but also to the business acumen side of things, which is so critical for becoming a leader in a firm and having that base of knowledge, which is not as easily shared.
I, have been to some of the Women in Design events and I really enjoy them. They're incredibly special. And I just wanted to get some of your examples of some of your favorite ways that members of the group have been able to support one another, either through specifically mentorship or other types of relationships.
I like this joke that I helped to found Women in Design because I needed friends. I had moved to Pittsburgh and I knew literally one person in the fall of 2016. And so I really had to be intentional about building community, finding new people, really wanting to feel comfortable and to have allies and friends, and what I had in DC and really was looking for here. I'm grateful that I pretty quickly found a very supportive, amazing community at Perkins Eastman. And then that really quickly expanded to women in design. And so I think women in design really first and foremost is about relationships. I know people who have found jobs, who've found friendships, who've really found camaraderie around being a working mom and all of the dimensions of that, about being the only woman in their firm and how to deal with those kinds of dynamics and feeling only and alone. So I think it's really striking always, whenever I hear this anecdote, which comes up a lot, it's really striking to me when people say, I didn't realize other people were having these experiences. And it's so valuable to me to just have talked to this person and they say, no, that's how I am feeling. That's what I'm going through right now too. So I think in this kind of broader topic of mentorship, it really happens for us in more relaxed and casual ways. We're building a network essentially. I really sort of hate the word networking because it feels so like dubious, like there's some sort of ulterior motive, when really it's just talking to one another, getting to know one another. So when we used to get together more regularly before the pandemic, of course, there was this palpable energy in the spaces that we were in together. As you know, anybody who has been to one of our events, there's this buzz and it just feels good to be there. And the same anecdotal sort of thing I hear over and over again. This was the best networking place I've ever come to. I felt so comfortable. I didn't feel pressure. I just felt like I could talk to people. And that is what we're about. It's just the kind of community that we're trying to build and to grow together, knowing that we're having similar experiences and there's these sort of commonalities that really bind us all together.
My next question is kind of about connecting some dots together. I wonder, when it comes to the intersection of function and beauty and health and equity and sustainability, that all align within the spaces we design, what are some areas that you think can best be strengthened through mentorship, and how do you see that happening?
There is so much to know about the built environment. I mean, the things that you listed off encompass in this enormous amount of knowledge that some of us get taught some of it in school, but it's really impossible for any one person to obtain the panoply of things that you really need to know and to be experts in any of these. So we tend to specialize, and then we know a little bit about something and a little bit about something and maybe a lot about a third thing. But I think the value in mentorship comes in finding people who have similar but adjacent interests. And then you can start to find those overlaps and then expand your knowledge base. So you do this a little bit over time, and all of a sudden you've got this really solid base of knowledge about something that you maybe haven't had a chance to implement. But all of a sudden, when you do, you feel confident and you have the exposure that you can to draw from. I think, again, in these mentor relationships, it's really just about talking to one another with intention. You get to know somebody maybe outside of this very narrowly defined project role that we often take on, and start to expand what you know about that person, which can then help expand what they know about the design industry, about whatever it is they're interested in, whether it's equity, sustainability, any of those things, materials, methods. For example, like say there's somebody in my office who I don't work with very regularly, but we've decided let's go grab coffee every few weeks or so, just because we want to get to know one another. And I find out from this person all of a sudden, oh, I didn't know you were interested in acoustics or playground design or historic preservation. But then when that opportunity comes up in our office, because there's always new things happening, maybe I hear about a project or I hear about an opportunity, I can say, hey, this person actually has this interest in this background and this thing, they might be a good fit. Whereas that person might not have been exposed to that previously. I think mentorship really in that way, it's about getting to know one another so that we can advocate for one another and amplify one another across all of these different spaces. That's how we become stronger designers. It's also how we become leaders.
So finally, since we are celebrating National Mentoring Month, I would love to know, do you have a special mentor relationship that you would want to share with us?
So this is going to sound dopey, but every mentor relationship that I have is special to me. And I don't think that there's one that I really could call out. When I was a young professional in the design industry, I really didn't have either casual or formal mentors, partly because there were no women that I could see in the spaces that I was in. And I just didn't build those relationships with the people that I was working with in any kind of meaningful way. And I think that really contributed to me leaving the design industry for almost 10 years. So once I came back with a vengeance, maybe, of I'm going to do things differently this time. I'm going to find the people who I connect with so that I can have the career that I want, but that I can also help the other people in my circles have the careers that they want and whatever that means to them. I think we really need to rethink what success means so that we can each have our own definitions. But I don't think we can do that in a vacuum. We can't do it without one another. And so every time I have a conversation with somebody, casual or formal mentorship conversation, it feels special because I feel like I'm gaining, one of those dots on my timeline of, okay, this is when I learned this thing, or this is how I started to think differently about this thing. Whether it's somebody who's 4 or 5 rungs up the corporate ladder from me, or a junior staff member that I'm working with or not working with, just chatting with. That being said, I do want to call out my other women in design co-leaders because they are a phenomenal group of women. There's about a dozen of us who've been doing this work for 3 years. We've been leading and building this community kind of in fits and starts when we can. We all have day jobs. We mostly are, either partnered or have kids and other obligations. And it's always special when the 12 or 15 of us can get together. And it's kind of the microcosm of women in design as a whole, in that we have that kind of synergy together. And those relationships are really special to me, really important. Friendships have reformed within that group. And I rely on some of those women regularly to just sort of help me stay on course and to sort of be my sort of board of directors that you are looking for in your own life to keep you on track and help you be the better person, the better designer, better leader that I'm looking for. And I think that we're all looking for. And without each of them, we would certainly not have been able to accomplish everything that we have.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for the opportunity. Mentorship is so important to all of us, but I think, as you've said, so much more so for women. And I think just giving voice to all of these things is really special.
Well, thank you for talking with me and sharing all of that. And thank you for all that you do for our community.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I don't get paid for any of it, but it's like I wouldn't be doing my career well if I wasn't.